Hello, welcome to the Impersonal Opinion podcast. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with Poffo Ortiz, Jamie Soden, and WSD. And
Ooh.
what was that noise?
Halloween, remember?
Yeah. WSD is there. He's trying to be all spooky because tomorrow is Halloween, and Poffo has suggested doing sort of a Halloween themed show. And we could talk about myths and holidays and that sort of thing. And before we started, Poffo actually mentioned something I was kind of interested in. He's mentioned that evangelical Christians are against Halloween, and which is actually kind of interesting
That's a
because
question. What
And,
are
and
they
he also
against?
mentioned something about Halloween being a time where people believe that the veil between the two worlds, the afterlife and the physical realm, being is the closest. If I'm remembering this right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the time. It's the time when literally spirits could
I
cross
got a
over. They
question.
could walk
What
the
are
earth.
they not against? That's cool.
Oh yeah. Well, they're not against whatever's in the Bible, except everything in the Bible is like based on all kinds of crazy tribalism and pagan myths and superstitions. So it's pretty hypocritical, sort of double standards going on there.
Yep.
Yeah, well, what's interesting about it is that growing up, we never celebrated Halloween or anything like that because to me, all it is, it's just, people celebrating dead things and killing themselves with candy, basically,
There is a sad aspect to this.
Candy, I
That,
love candy.
so much of the
Yeah, but too much will kill you, man.
so much of the candy is made of gelatin, and gelatins are basically just chopped up the body parts of chopped up pigs and cows and chickens. It's made of animal parts basically.
Man, why you have to ruin candy?
Well, I mean, they have gummy bears, gummy worms, all that stuff comes from gelatin, and gelatin literally is just like used animal body parts.
Oh
And,
man, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't even realize that. Like, I don't eat
No, you're
candy.
mean.
I don't even.
You ruined candy for me.
I was getting ready to give you an alternative though, because they have you can get like sort of dried sugar strawberries and pineapples, and they have every kind of fruit that you can what do you call it, like you can dehydrate, and then the natural sugars kind of crystallize it and make it like super sweet, and it's even better than like gumdrops or candy. I mean, I'm saying you can make like natural candy out of fruit.
Yeah,
I
well,
get that
as far as
stuff all the
I'm
time.
concerned, fruit is candy. I mean,
Yeah,
fruit is sweet.
yeah.
I love apples, oranges, grapes, watermelon. I love all that stuff anyway.
Especially here's a tip. Especially if you put it in the freezer, but don't put it in the freezer too long. It's gonna get too hard.
Yeah, but Poffo, you still got to be careful with the calories because obviously if you have too many calories, then you put on weight.
Yeah. Sugar. I mean, even natural fructose. I mean, it's good for you. It's a more natural sugar. It takes longer for your body to metabolize it. If you eat too much, obviously, it puts on a lot of weight, a lot of calories. There are a lot of vegans who, completely, plant based diet, but they're still overweight, and it just has to do with their calorie intake. But so we're all jumping around here. So let's pick one topic, talk for a little while, and then we can switch to another topic and do it like that.
Yeah, sure.
All
Like,
right, no problem.
Just
yeah,
go from one topic to another. Maybe talk for like 5-10 minutes for each thing, and then move on.
yeah.
So whatever you guys wanna broach first.
Yeah, like, see, here's the deal: is now, Poffo, you and the other guys probably know a lot more about the history of Halloween than I do, and of course I've heard it before, but I never actually cared, so I haven't paid attention. So,
Sure. I Halloween is one of the most significant holidays in my life because of my former career as a special makeup effects artist. Like that was my busiest time. That was the season, when everybody wanted me to do their makeup. I was just continuously getting commissioned to do different art projects and stuff. I've worked at haunted houses for most of my life, so Halloween was always a huge deal. Doing set design and building props and designing stuff, and I've had just so many different jobs that revolve around the holiday, and I love the fall. I really truly love autumn is my favorite season, just because of the colors and the coolness in the air and the way you can just kind of feel everything kind of slowing down and winter's coming. I don't experience it as much here in Southern California. You really have no seasons, so it kind of sucks. But I'm from East Coast. Oh, sure, we get it. Yeah, we get the winter late. That's all. We get it like 3 months later. But right now it's still kind of warm. It's a little cloudy today, which is kind of nice. But anyway, so Halloween was it's been a huge part of my life. It was my favorite holiday growing up as a kid, getting dressed up, doing makeup, just going out, like just different events, doing different live haunts and stuff. But I also have a lot of sort of like my interests in folklore and in paganism and in ancient cultures and stuff. I've done a lot of research on it, and it's pronounced Samhain actually. Samhain, it's pronounced Samhain, Chandler, and it represents sort of the end of the year, the end of the harvest, and it's kind of like for the ancient Celts, for the Gaelic peoples. There's a lot of myths and stuff that surround it, and a lot of stuff has been sort of added on later on that wasn't really part of the original celebrations. They talk about like they made sacrifices. They did sacrifice animals, but it wasn't like they say they were burning cats alive and things like that. That all happened later in the Middle Ages because of the Christian fearful superstitions.
Well, the animal sacrifice stuff was more Old Testament stuff where they sacrificed lambs, remember, for the skin.
Yeah, and the Celts did that to some extent because they were agrarian culture. Everything was based around the agricultural, the seasons and the crops and bringing in the harvest and their pantheon of gods. It all revolved around sort of the land. Everything had to do with their connections to the land. But there's some really interesting a lot of interesting traditions that made it in, and it was during the influx of all the immigrants, the Irish immigrants into America, when Halloween actually became much more popular, and then eventually became a national holiday. Because the Puritans, they were totally against it. They saw all pagan traditions as evil and corrupt and of the devil, and everything was
misinterpreted. It's only certain ones.
Yeah, it was everything was demonized. So but I really like the idea of the sort of the parallels with what's happening kind of in the natural world and with the seasons as fall comes and everything is dying and everything's sort of withering and going into hibernation, and then we reenact that as well, like in our lives. We kind of slow down, and it's the winter holidays are starting to approach, but I love Halloween. I love everything about it. You're asking about what do the Christians, what are they not against? Like WSD was saying, the evangelicals,
that's a good question.
They're fearful of everything that has the appearance of evil, basically anything that seems to evoke something supernatural that's not supernatural on the side of the light, I guess, on the good side. Like it's Ouija boards and divination and all these different things, and things that the symbolism of Halloween, of witches and ghosts and goblins and ghouls and spooks and all these different things. Because the reason Christians are so sensitive to these things is because they literally believe in spirits and demons and and evil forces and evil powers in a supernatural transcendent realm. To those of us who are more rational, who are more educated, obviously more philosophical, and we can understand the cultural aspects, and we can also understand the psychological aspects, but we know that there's actually really nothing to fear because there's no supernatural world, But for me, I love the aesthetic. I love everything. I love that around Halloween, everybody is dressing and looking like the way I look like year round, or the way that I wish people could dress and
forget a hockey mask and machete.
Not quite, just kind of like the focus, the kind of the darker aesthetic,
Well,
of focusing on horror movies.
I haven't seen horror movies. I've been seeing, but I haven't seen like stuff like Master Chief. They like Master Chief, or what else is popular these days? It's like SpongeBob.
Or Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street,
No, I haven't seen that either. I seen Homer.
I was gonna say, no, like with horror movies, especially in LA, because it's like the industry, the film industry is here. There's always stuff going on. I mean, like every other day, it's like there's some kind of event. The other day at the Hollywood Front Cemetery, they had Harley Quinn. Yeah, that's popular this year. Everybody's doing Harley Quinn. But everybody did the Day of the Dead at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and they go all out, man. Like the makeups, it's incredible. They have all the Sugar Skull makeups, and it's a huge deal here in Southern California. But I don't know, man. I if I could have my wish, I would like to just get out of here and go someplace kind of more rural, like a small town or something, and just kind of experience it like that. We actually went up to Idlewild once. Just to kind of see like in a little town what they do and all their little festivals and stuff like that. Like it's a very nostalgic time of the year, for a lot of people. A lot of childhood memories, and I love that it's all about the kids too. That I love seeing kids dressed up and going all out in costume, and of course the adults, it's like an excuse for girls to dress slutty and get all like dolled up, and pretty much like you just wear your underwear and that's like a Halloween costume in Hollywood.
Anything has for a Halloween costume these days.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I'm much.
Except me, I don't wear costumes, but yeah.
If I were to wear a costume, just to have a laugh with friends and that, I'll dress as the Grim.
Yeah, but I don't wear costumes. I don't.
Yeah, there's the whole idea of being someone else, like kind of escaping for a while.
Oh, I understand. It's just not for me.
You can cut loose and just be somebody else for a day. Me and my girlfriend were always like, we wish Halloween was just a month-long holiday, like the whole month. It would be great instead of just one night. Like I love everything kind of building up to it. You see all the stores like decorated, and people everywhere we go, like people are getting into it and they're talking about like the parties they're going to. They're talking about the costumes they're going to make, and because I did makeup and special effects and stuff, like I really appreciate I just really appreciate the time of year that everybody's kind of focused on the stuff that I'm interested in all the rest of the year,
Yeah, but this is the time of year where people watch horror films as well. Like,
yeah.
They start doing marathons of horror films. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have cable, but I remember when I was younger, I loved it. I loved when they played them all.
I don't need cable. I have the internet.
Yeah, just download.
Yeah. See, here's the thing: is that I can't stand horror movies. I don't like being scared. You know what I mean?
Me neither.
Well, Chandler, they're not really scary. It's more just like it's fun. Like for most people, who love horror, they're not scared by it. They just like they like the concepts and the themes and something that's completely different than normal life. That's what makes it great. It's almost like fantasy, just like the same reason people love fantasy and the same reason people love roller coasters. It's the illusion of danger and fear and stuff, and it's not like you're really.
And no one's being killed or anything. It's just
Yeah, but I don't like anything even remotely appearing that way. See, because
that's interesting. That's like the Christians. The Christians have the same issue, except they get like emotionally and like spiritually, psychologically offended by it because they think it's real. They think you're opening doorways, to other dimensions and stuff.
And it's not because of that, but first of all, like the idea that somebody would get entertainment out of a depiction of someone being hurt or killed, that's just so disgusting.
Or cut in half.
Because that shows what psychopaths people are. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but if you grow up with it, and there's a very strong line between fantasy and reality. And like I said, I've been dressing up as monsters and scaring people since I was like 10 years old. Excuse me. It's always been just a theatrical thing. I did theater, I did drama when I was younger. I've acted in films. I've worked on set. So many times. You have like picture. Okay, the last Walking Dead episode, right? I don't know if anybody saw that. I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but the beginning of this new season, there was some really horrific shit that went down. And actually, they took it right from the comic, which was great. And it was sad and it was tragic and it was totally disturbing, and a lot of people even complained about it. But then you could see the interviews with the actors and when they're on set and stuff, and it's just like it's all they're laughing and joking, and you see the makeup that they did on some of the characters, and you are in like an alternate world where you're creating this like illusion, and it's something that just kind of propels the story. So it's not like I don't get off on real violence and death, and sort of like those old Faces of Death videos. I don't. I've seen cadavers. I've looked at dead bodies. I've looked at corpses for reference. I've seen death all my life. I've had friends and family members that have died, and that it's not something that like appeals to me in that sense. But like at the same time, it's like I've had to study that stuff for reference and to make it look realistic, to design blood and things like that, or livor mortis, to make a body look like it's really decomposing or it's been sitting for a while without the blood flow. So you study it, and I don't know, there's just some people, we just have this sort of attraction. I love graveyards. Like me and my girlfriend today, we're trying to find a cemetery that was open so we can just go there and take pictures because it's all nice and cloudy and overcast. Like I just grew up watching horror movies, and so I'm attracted. I'm kind of drawn to the macabre.
There's a cemetery.
Which one?
I will admit that there's some horror films that I can't tolerate, like especially ones where people like vomit and stuff, because I've got a phobia to vomit. I will admit that.
Really?
Yeah, I know. But at the same time, they don't vomit in all horror films. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just about people getting sliced in half by chainsaws and whatnot. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, there's certain things that really creep people out. I have a thing with like maggots. Maggots are the only thing that creep me out. I mean, I don't have any hatred towards them. They're just, baby fly larvae. But the visual aesthetic of it, looking at it, it creeps me out. The idea, that's the only thing that really gives me kind of the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah. Another thing that gives me the heebie-jeebies is like this. This is why I didn't like, the third Final Destination. I don't know what it is. I just don't like people getting burned alive. I don't know what it is, but it bothers me.
There was a scene there where they were getting burned alive in part 3.
Yeah.
And Chandler, can I just say something, right? You may not like depictions of people being killed, even when it's only acting and no one actually being hurt. Like in cartoons, for example. But think of it like a murder mystery, right? You don't have to root for you don't have to cheer for the villain. You can cheer for the good guys. And sometimes they'll come out of it. Sometimes they'll win, So
it brings up a good point. Is it's in many horror films, the good ones anyway, not just like torture porn, but the good ones actually depict the battle between good and evil. They're showcasing sort of people in survival situations, which is great. I love movies like that where you see how people react and you kind of put yourself in their shoes, and it's a journey, it's an adventure, it's exhilarating, it's like exciting because you're kind of with them. Experiencing it with them. It's that kind of what is it? You're sympathizing with the characters, like kind
exactly. Like in a Dracula film, they kill him with a stake, don't they? They win in the end. So
yeah. So it's not just the depiction of gore and violence and stuff. It's that those are aspects of life, and I guess for many of us, who love horror and macabre and stuff, we have kind of just an attraction to that, like just the visuals of that. But not obviously not seeing it in real life or anything like that. We're probably more desensitized. So when we see it in real life, I mean, I was a car accident once, and I wasn't in the car accident.
I heard that the stuff they say in the movies is nothing compared to real life.
Yeah, well,
it's a lot worse than real life.
Yeah, what you see in the films is usually what people expect like gore to look like. Like actual real gore sometimes is very different, but they'll tell us we have to kind of cater to what the audience expects to see. What I was going to say was I've seen a woman with her head split open in a car accident, and she's laying on the ground, and I could just see her cranium like cracked open. She probably died. I was trying to tell people to cover her up because she was going into shock, to keep her warm, and I had to leave. And who knows, she probably got killed because she got hit. And it threw her from the vehicle, and then another car ran her over when she was on the ground. She had road rash all over, and it was awful. And it's not like I was like salivating, taking like pictures of it. I wasn't getting off on it. But I could see, because I understand anatomy. I could see, what was going on with her, physically and stuff. And it's awful. But I guess we're probably a little more desensitized to it because we've been exposed to it in a fictional context for so long,
Well, you see, that's kind of the thing about it, is I feel like they've gotten so used to fictional violence and all sorts of bloody stuff and scary stuff, that I think what actually the result of that is that they care less about the real pain and suffering and death that is actually going on. And
there's an element to that, yeah. There is an element to that. Well, blame the video games. Blame the video games.
That would be the case for the really bad horror films, the ones that are torture porn, like Poffo was on about, like Saw and Human Centipede. Those are the really bad ones, you know. So.
Yeah, I didn't mind. I didn't mind either one.
I could watch Saw.
I love the Saw movies. I didn't mind Human Centipede. I thought it was kind of entertaining and funny. It's obviously a horrible situation, but again, like there are other. I mean, I could list off some films I've heard of that are really bad though. That are just for the sake of. I mean, we're horrible shit at, like, you know, children being sodomized and horrible shit happening, and or the whole film is just torturing, you know, a captive person. I don't care for those, and I'll watch them, but then sometimes it'll disturb me, it'll stay with me. But most of, like, what I like as far as horror is it deals with more the supernatural, the mythological, like monsters and creatures and demons, and a lot of psychological stuff, or things that anything has to do with, like, folklore or like ancient stories or legends and things like that have, like, resurfaced. That's what is more interesting to me. Like, I've always, as a kid, like Clash of the Titans, you know, or the movie Legend. These were, like, some of my favorite films that depicted all these great monsters.
Clash of the Titans?
Clash of the Titans, yeah, the old classic from the 80s. It was in the 80s, and then they did a remake. They did a reboot a few years ago. But it shows all the Olympian gods and goddesses, and Perseus and Medusa, and, you know, fighting the mythological creatures, because the Greeks and the Romans, they had this whole all these great stories of these mythical beasts, mythical creatures.
I've seen some of that in, like, the Percy Jackson and the Olympians movies. Have you seen those?
I haven't seen that, but same kind of thing. That's set in modern times, right?
Yeah, it's really hilarious because they have all the Greek gods and titans and all these Greek myths, but it's all happening in the United States of America. And so it's like it's really just messed up because these ancient Greek stories are combined with modern America and all these places. And that's what makes it funny.
Right on. Well, yeah, what I was trying to say was, you know, there's different people. I went to school with, you know, some really morbid kids who got off on a lot of sick stuff that was way down, sort of on a much darker level than the way that I enjoy horror. So there's just all different levels to it. You know, like, but for me, it's more like the battle between good and evil, like seeing kind of like the strange and the unusual, you know, like things that are sort of not, you know, not stereotypical. It's anything that's extraordinary and is different than everyday life. That's what appeals to me is things that are different. And there's just a whole kind of psychology of it. You know, when you watch so many horror films and you read as much Lovecraft as I've read, and you read as many horror novels and sort of study it and you recreate it, you know, whether you're an actor or a makeup artist, it's just, you have a deeper understanding of it. And so I can understand how, you know, some people are turned off. I can understand how people are afraid and sort of superstitious of it. Like I
squeamish to it. Yeah.
What's that?
Or even squeamish, you know, they're afraid of it.
Sure. Yeah, sure. That they're just not as they haven't been exposed to as much of it. So even the simulation of it. I'm trying to think of one of the last films I worked on. I did like this ripped off jaw. They didn't actually use the effect I did, but it was a prosthetic where her whole entire jaw was like ripped down, and you could see like the mandible bone and the tongue was hanging out, and it was all like gory and bloody, and there was like, we used ultra slime and blood, and it was all sticky, and it looked great. It was like beautiful. But like,
in other words, it was ugly.
That's why I could not be in that business.
I have pictures of it, and then, you know, someone else would be like, "Oh my God, that's so horrific." But, you know, the actress, she had a great time. She was a good model, and, you know, it's like fun because, well, I mean, this is the deeper psychology of it. I think that I've watched so many, you know, horror documentaries and stuff that talk about like the psychology of fear. You know, that we flirt with these things and we like sort of the illusion of it because it helps us. It helps ease the anxiety of the real thing. It's kind of like, I think in ancient times, they would dress up the Celts and the Druids and stuff, and they would, when they wear masks and whatever, because they were blending in with the spirits, and so they would dress up and they would look like ghosts and goblins and demons and whatever. The Krampus folklore ties into all this too. I love Krampus. We went to all these Krampus festivals this
Krampus,
past.
but what is Krampus?
Krampus is the Austrian devil that's the like the sidekick of Saint Nicholas. He's the one who actually takes away the bad children and like beats them with the birch branch, and he's what they use to kind of, you better be good. If you're good, you'll get the rewards from Saint Nicholas. You'll get the presents. If you're bad, then Krampus will come get you. And they've gone.
I thought he was the anti-Santa or something. I don't know.
No, he's like Santa's like slave helper kind of. He's like the dark side of Christmas, of the ancient sort of
kind of like a Santa Claus's evil twin brother.
Yeah, he's like a goat. He's like a goat demon. He always has horns. He's depicted in all these different ways. He has like a cloven hoof, or maybe he's got 2 hooves. But they go all out, man. Like in Germany and Austria and stuff, they carve these intricate like wooden masks, and they have the festival, Krampusnacht. They have this like parade, and it gets crazy. It gets violent sometimes. They grab people out of the crowd and they like wrestle with them. But it's really interesting how other holidays are celebrated, and how they originally had these greeting cards here in America, where these horrible depictions of like this demon, this devil dragging these little kids away. And you think nowadays it's so not PC. It would never go today, in our culture now. But it's just interesting how there's like this dichotomy of like the good Saint Nicholas and then the evil Krampus to come and punish you if you're bad, if you're naughty. But I love the aesthetic. I love all the masks, and we actually met some of the troupe of the what are they called? The troupe of characters. They get dressed up and they wear like the sheepskins and everything, and they have the cowbells, and they do this crazy march down the street, and it's becoming a huge thing. Like people really are gravitating towards it, just because they're kind of fed up with the commercialism of Christmas, and so it's sort of an opportunity to kind of get back to the darker roots of the holiday, where it's much more pagan. When you're in the middle of all these guys, this parade of all these like demons, and they're like growling, and like you could smell like the funk from their outfits, because it's like real animal skins, and they're banging, making all this noise, and it's very, very primal. They're all howling, and it makes you feel like you're back in ancient Europe somewhere, experiencing like these old festivals that had completely different meanings, than the way we celebrate things now. So it's interesting. You guys there?
I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Yeah. So WSD likes horror movies. I think Jamie likes horror movies.
And I'm limited on horror movies.
Yeah. So you have your certain palette, and then Chandler, you don't like horror movies at all.
Certain horror films
I really don't.
There's certain ones I wouldn't watch, but there's certain ones I would. Like, you know the one called Beetlejuice, don't you, Poffo?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a comedy. It's more of a. I'm not sure if I can call it a horror film, because it's more comedy.
It's like a horror comedy, like a supernatural comedy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's Tim Burton and Michael Keaton and Winona Ryder, and I saw it in the theater when it came out. Man, that's how old I am. But yeah, it's classic, and they had like a certain vision of the afterlife, but it was very like kind of sort of hyper real, like comical. Everything kind of took on a very wacky Tim Burton-ish, feel to it.
Well,
if
what would be interesting?
Go ahead, John.
What would be interesting to talk about is how these myths and these movies and the celebrations that people do around Halloween, what does that tell us about what people believe about death and the afterlife?
Right. Yeah, there's so many like sort of universal motifs that are explored during this time of the year. Like I'm looking at my girlfriend right now. She just came in. She's wearing like a skeleton shirt, and I'm reminded of the Day of the Dead, and how with the Mexican cultures, they view it as not a scary thing. It's actually something to kind of celebrate, and it helps them connect with their ancestors, connect with their past, connect with their loved ones. you know, in Hollywood, in many ways, it becomes like a gay and lesbian, like all out, like free for all. It becomes like a Mardi Gras kind of festival where you can just express yourself and you can dress and look any way you want, you know. And so for certain groups of people, certain subcultures, and much of the mainstream, it becomes a way to sort of embrace your wild side, and you know, for like one night of the year or a couple nights during the year, you completely just cut loose and you can act much more primal, you know. I love all the folklore and you know, the origins of it. You know, how it can be traced back to the Druids and you know, the traditions of Ireland when they came over here, and they would carve out like a turnip, and they would do bonfires and stuff in the old country. And then here, you know, we have the pumpkin, and if we, you know, as much as we can, they've tried to kind of hang on to those things. But then, of course, with a different culture, it evolves and it becomes something else. It becomes about the costumes and the consumerism and the commercialism of it all. But I really like the idea, though, that that this time of the year, like, it helps people cope with their fears, and it helps people kind of get in touch with themselves. And then, of course, for like evangelicals and those who are really superstitious, it becomes something else to demonize and you know, be like another cause to kind of be against, you know, because they think that it's all evil. They think that you open doorways. They think that you know, you can become possessed or oppressed by demons and spirits if you act in this way. But it really is just you know, in the name of fun and stuff like that. Of course, people can take advantage of it and do bad things and vandalize as well. You know, that the whole tradition
pull a prank.
Yeah,
like
right.
This one kid last week.
For a long time, there was so much vandalism and a lot of stuff going on like that in early America that they outlawed it for a long time, and then it eventually came back around, like Devil's Night, the night before Halloween, which is tonight. And people TP and they egg people's houses, and I never took part in that stuff when I was
younger. Well, they call it Mystery Night.
What is it?
Mystery Night.
Mystery Night?
Yes.
I was gonna say, yeah. So there's the fear. For people who believe in the supernatural, there's a fear of the negative aspect of the supernatural, you know. And then for people who say, like Wiccans and pagans, neo-pagans, and those who practice Wicca and who consider themselves white witches or you know, just witches in general, people who are more interested in the occult and you know, the more ancient pagan traditions, there's no fear there, and it's much more sort of nature centered and earth based. Everything revolves around the actual season, and you know, communing with the sort of the elemental forces, the spirits of nature, the forces of earth, and of course there is this idea of another world, of an afterlife, you know. So just depending on what you're.
I'm gonna run to the bathroom. I'll be back.
Sure. Whatever your idea is basically about the supernatural, about the afterlife, that's kind of what you bring to it, you know?
Yeah.
So if you're fearful to begin with and you think that demons can possess you, then yeah, you're going to be scared and you're going to be turned off by, I remember there was a Christian woman who, she gave me a ride to work one day, I think, and I had her drop me off at the haunted house I worked at. It was a year-round haunted house in Virginia Beach, where we would scare people just continuously, like all year long. And she dropped me off there, and she was like, "Yeah, there's a lot of bad energy coming from that place." She says, "I could feel it. There's evil." And I'm like, "Really?" and it's just that she's looking at it because it's all painted up like a haunted house. It was an old movie theater that they converted into this giant, you know, haunted house. And my old roommates, my friends, painted the outside of it, and I did a lot of the design, sort of the set design. And so in her mind, you know, she saw evil, where me, it was like my second home, and I loved it. It was everything that I loved, everything I was into. It represented something completely different to me, you know. So it's more like your background, your kind of your upbringing, and what you're familiar with, what you're exposed to. A lot of times it comes down to ignorance, you know. Like if you're really educated in this stuff, there's nothing to fear. I mean, one of the second books I wrote was about
I don't believe in spirits, so there's no house that will actually scare me, you know. So.
Yeah, there's no symbol or you know, I'm trying to think of there's no like object or image or icon that is really evil without the evil intention of human beings to give it power. Something can have power like the swastika, like what Hitler did using the swastika, right? That's a solar symbol that was used in India for, centuries before he adopted it. And it has a very powerful kind of, it speaks to you, when you look at it. And that symbol is now forever associated with the Holocaust and with evil and suffering.
Yeah, I have a story about that. Actually, see, because I used to do a lot of art in Inkscape. In fact, Facebook still shows me some of the art I used to do that I posted years ago. Like you shared this 5 years ago, so I'll share it again. Well, years ago, I actually made a swastika in Inkscape because I looked at it. I looked at it on Wikipedia or something. I'm like, man, this is a really easy shape to make. You can just make it with a bunch of squares, because it's totally rectangular. And the way I did mine was actually like it wasn't turned diagonally like the ones
Right.
that you see that are associated with the Nazis and stuff are actually more turned 45 degrees when you're looking at it. But mine was just flat, it was done very basic. So I post that to Facebook, and then I get this message from this Christian lady, and you have to understand, I was a Christian back then at the time. This was years ago, man. But she was like, oh, this is not a good symbol, and I got a lot of negative reactions to that, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is just a geometric shape. It didn't represent anything evil to me. Sure, I knew that it was a symbol that Adolf Hitler used with what he did. I didn't know too much about it, but it's just a symbol. And you also
You're talking about the right angles. The original swastika, sometimes it had dots, it had points in between, and it was just right angles, and like sitting straight up and down. And that was a powerful symbol that meant regeneration, rebirth. It was a solar symbol. It represented the sun, enlightenment, all this stuff. And you can still see it on temples and stuff in India. But again, the Hitler thing, right? He knew enough about sort of the power of influence to adopt it and use it, and he turned it, like you said, at an angle. And now it's forever associated in people's minds. And we could talk about this stuff forever about symbolism, but like it's all about how it's used, So if something can be, let's see, why is an upside down cross considered unholy? They would say it's because it's the opposite of the Christian cross. It's mocking it. Well, supposedly Peter was crucified upside down, and so in many of the I believe in St. Peter's Basilica and stuff, the Pope has a chair with an upside down cross in the back of it, and his throne has an upside down cross. Well, no one's like throwing a fit over that because they know sort of the origin and the history of it, So and then you can talk about the pentagram, how the pentagram is really a symbol of the five elements, how it was a symbol of protection, and then of course it got appropriated by Anton LaVey, and he made the sigil of Baphomet for the Church of Satan. So now the pentagram is forever thought of as an evil symbol,
see,
but it's not evil at all.
Yeah, see, my sister threw a fit about the pentagram. Here's what I thought was so funny. Okay, now
is one that represents evil, one that doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, here's what you gotta understand is now, of course, I love all these, like they're regular polygon type things, like all these simple shapes that fit inside a circle, including the pentagram, the hexagram, and all the other regular polygons. I love those, so I was posting those. But my sister was superstitious about that, and she thought the pentagram was satanic, and I'm like, this is a 5-sided star. I mean, if you cut a pizza into 5 equal sized slices and then cut off the round parts, you have a pentagon, and then do every other corner, and I mean, I know how it's drawn. I've done it in Inkscape, and to me, I like the shape, but my sister's like, it's a satanic thing. But then my sister, she would always wear her hexagram. See, that's what I thought was so funny.
I was about to say, Chandler, the hexagram is actually a very powerful alchemical symbol that was used in magic and all kinds of
the hexagon or whatever.
The hexagon, the Star of David, the Magen David, it's called.
Oh yeah.
It's actually one of the most powerful occult symbols that exists. I believe the OTO used it. It's been incorporated into all these different things, and it represents earth, air, fire, and water. It represents the male and female aspects. It was adopted, and then it became used on the flag, the flag of Israel. But it was originally thought to be the sigil that was on the seal of King Solomon's ring, because he was actually in control of demons, and that's how he was able to build the temple. That's how the folklore that surrounds that goes, that he actually had mastery over the demons, and that was the seal, because it was a magical symbol. But now you talk to any Jew or Christian about that, and they're just like, oh, that's just the Star of David, that's just the
see, my sister. Here's the deal: is my sister would wear that because she thought it made her look Jewish, because she had this desire to be Jewish.
Right.
But so supposedly, according to her, the hexagram is good, but the pentagram is bad. And I'm like, they're just 5 and 6 pointed stars.
They're geometric, yeah. And if you get into like sacred geometry, I mean, they're just you've got these you've got all these different symbols that represent like different elements, and that's been understood for hundreds of years, like what these things mean, but then they just get misunderstood by people who are just
superstition
superstitious. Right. For a long time, people were like the Venus Project. That's evil because Venus is Lucifer. The Venus Project.
That's what I haven't heard before.
Satan. Yeah. You never heard that? Yeah.
No.
That the Venus Project, because
that is the first time I heard that.
The word Lucifer is a mistranslation. There is no proper name written there. It's in Isaiah and in Ezekiel. It's a reference to the morning star. It's a reference to Venus, and the god that was associated. The god was Phosphorus, was associated with that star, and it was a metaphor. And they ended up sort of making it into a literal transliteration of the word light bearer, and it was the two words light bearer that became Lucifer. And then so Venus is the devil, basically. Like, if people can understand a little bit of that, but then they think it's a pagan god, it's evil, it's the morning star. Well, Jesus was also referred to as the morning star, so
yeah. But in other religions, I mean, Venus was the goddess of love. So,
right.
It was the planet between Mercury and Earth.
One of the reasons that they say that also, and tying back with the pentagram, the pentacle or the pentagram, actually the route of Venus makes the sort of the procession of it, of the way that it moves, cosmologically, makes a star. It makes a 5-pointed star itself. So this is another reason why it may have been associated with it. Interestingly enough, what's actually considered evil, to real alchemists and magicians and stuff, is a pentagram that's not completed. Like, if there's it's drawn, but then there's a space that's left open, that's what you use to conjure demons, because the pentagram itself actually is what traps a demon or protects you from demons in demonology and stuff.
Even Supernatural got this right.
Right. Yeah, if you want to watch the show Supernatural with the Winchester brothers. The pentagram that's not completed is what allowed is Mephistopheles and Faust to come in and do his dirty work, because this is kind of the way it works, is all these sigils and glyphs and symbols and sort of sigils of protection and stuff. They supposedly trap the spirit, because like spirits are kind of like OCD and they have to follow the patterns. You ever hear like when you throw
Sam and Dean Winchester that
you can't throw, if you throw some jelly beans on the floor in front of a vampire, he has to stop to count them all because he's OCD. Or if you have shoelaces that are tied. You've never heard this?
I never heard this. Where are you getting this
patterns?
Blood.
Yeah, when you look at patterns and stuff, those are used to trap spirits, because they have to follow the lines. And then when you have a very complex pattern that's like remember in Supernatural WSD whenever they use a trap, like a devil's trap that they would draw all those symbols on the ground. It was because
but it would make sense, because when they usually set up a trap, it usually traps them in. Like, for example, that pentagram. It was like they try to go out. It'd be like bumping into a wall or something. and
Right,
if
right.
and
They
the
can't.
angel escapes, they burst into flames or something. Yeah.
On a weird psychological level, it's because when they look at it, when they see it, they have to follow all the lines, and then following the lines, they actually get trapped in the symbol itself. That's how it works. And I've drawn, you know, this, I may lose some credibility here, but like one of the last films I worked on, we actually recreated like a satanic ceremony where I took it straight from the Satanic Bible, and I took all these images and I drew it in chalk on the ground, and we went through this whole thing of where the girl was going to get like raped and get impregnated, and she was going to have like the devil's baby and all this stuff. And I was in like the creepiest place you could ever think of. It was this abandoned warehouse out in the middle of nowhere, out in Pungo, I think. Maybe it was Portsmouth, I don't know, in Virginia. And literally in the dark, drawing like satanic symbols on the ground. There's candles everywhere. We have like knives, and then I have like fake blood. And, you know, pretty much we actually read from the book. We read a lot of some of the rituals, some of the incantations. So if there was ever like, you know, a chance that there was something real that was demonic, I would have gotten possessed like a long time ago, because I spent like nights and nights in my friend's his studio, and with all kinds of props and you know, occult paraphernalia and stuff I was drawing on the ground for the reshoots. I had to draw another thing of the seal where we brand the girl's arm with a symbol, an alchemical symbol. And like, you know, I was listening to like Bauhaus, and it was like everything I could possibly do to get possessed. And of course, like nothing happened. I mean, there's no danger in it, like for me.
Yeah, that's how you know it's fake.
Yeah, it's all you know, but it's very powerful to those who believe in it. You know, to those in the ancient times, ancient cultures and stuff, when there was when you didn't have the education that we have now, when we didn't understand science the way we do now. You know, like
they needed people of those times needed spirits to account for the bad things that happen.
They didn't understand the natural phenomenon, so they attributed to spirits and things in the supernatural realm. So the supernatural is extremely powerful in the human psyche, and you can see it because all these ghost hunter shows, all this stuff, this renewed interest in the supernatural. There's so many paranormal investigations. I believe that there is something to many of these reports. I believe it has to do with energy. I don't believe that there are sort of disembodied spirits that are affecting people, but I believe that maybe places can hold like energy or the memory of something, of extremely strong emotions that can leave like an imprint, like the emulsion paper of a photograph. So it's something like that, more like an impression that's left. It's not a conscious entity, because I believe that consciousness ends at death, at physical death. So I've never had a fear of that stuff. That's why I don't.
That gave you life has been destroyed. So. Yeah.
Right. That's the source of consciousness is the brain, is the body. So when the body ceases to function, then consciousness ceases. It's only like wishful thinking and our desires to extend life, our desires to be reunited with our loved ones that continue and perpetuate like these myths of an afterlife. But I'm all for investigating it. I'm 100% on board with doing like real peer-reviewed, double-blind studies, scientific experiments, that actually can yield, real answers when it comes to this stuff. We should have, in a laboratory setting, we should study these phenomenon and get to the bottom of it.
I mean, there's a case, well, not really a case, but there's an investigation warranted for physical afterlife, because what I mean by that is that our matter still remains after we die. So we don't know if we get reborn as some other animal or something and lose all our memories because our previous bodies have been destroyed. You get what I mean by this?
So you're saying, so it's like a form of reincarnation. I mean, like the life essence. But see, I believe that that other animal, that other organism is a culmination of its own sensory input and its own consciousness. Like the consciousness we have, that we possess, is unique and individual to us. I believe all life is eternal, okay, and life continues on, but not in the same coherent form. It just changes form. It continues to change form. There are these cases of reincarnation though that are fascinating. Where kids are describing things that they would never know, and that may be a case of just psychic abilities where they're tapping into past memories or personalities or information that they've somehow been exposed to. I do believe that there are naturalistic explanations for everything. I mean, as interested as I am in the occult and in folklore and metaphysics and supernatural, I do believe that there are just naturalistic explanations. It'll always come down to just another property or another sort of quality of nature that we've yet to really comprehend and understand, and that we've just attributed. That's why I don't believe we should attribute immediately supernatural, a supernatural source to it before we can.
I don't
before we
believe
fully understand what it is.
I don't believe in spirits or anything, because that's just nonsense. How can a consciousness exist without a brain? You need a brain for conscious beings to exist. Because as far as what science tells us, consciousness can only happen when there's a complex nervous system to support it.
Sure.
So, I do think there's an investigation that should be done into physical afterlife, but definitely not spiritual, because spiritual ones are just impossible. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in demons or angels or anything like that.
Yeah, it's all. These are all sort of these are sort of personifications and projected archetypes that we've created. In human history, to account for things, to comfort us, or to whatever it might be. Angels are our protectors. Demons are our tempters, and really what it all comes down to is the human mind and the experience of, like, as we talked about in that last episode about consciousness, that we're every living organism, every higher evolved organism is in the struggle between the reptile brain and the frontal lobe and the neocortex. So we're in this struggle. So what do you do when you don't understand that? When you don't understand the inner workings of the brain, you kind of personify it and you say there are evil forces, there are good forces, which there are, but they're all physiological and psychological.
Yeah. So there definitely needs to be an investigation done into this sort of thing. I'm open-minded about this. I do believe that
right.
We should question whether or not life can exist.
It would be one of the greatest. I mean, it would be the greatest discovery. I mean, in the history of the world. NDEs, OBEs, all these experiences, psychic phenomena, and stuff like that. There's actually another aspect to this, the hypnagogic state. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this, but when people have when they're in between like sleep and awake, they often experience sleep paralysis. They have the old hag syndrome, when there's like an old witch in their room staring at them, or there's something on their chest like a succubus or an incubus. And I just experienced this 2 days ago, where I had these really stressful kind of nightmares, and I don't sleep much, and I was trying to relax, and then just in and out of consciousness. And then I was in this in-between state, and I won't go into detail, but I ended up seeing something that was like right on, like laying on top of me, and it was terrifying. And yet when I actually woke up, there's nothing there. And so a lot of times we say it's just a dream. It's not quite a dream. It's what happens when your body is asleep. When you sleep, your body releases like signals to your brain and chemicals that kind of keep your body still, keep your body kind of paralyzed. Otherwise, you'd be flailing around every time you do something in your dream. You would be reacting physically. So your body stays still while your unconscious mind or your subconscious is at work. And sometimes your mind actually wakes up, but your body is still asleep, so to speak. So you're conscious, but in that state, that in-between state, you become hyper susceptible to suggestion. So any little thing that you hear, any little thing that you see in the dark, your eyes are kind of halfway open, halfway closed. You could just be kind of conscious that you're in the room, and any little thing, almost like being hypnotized. Actually, it is. It's just like being hypnotized. Like people are put into this state voluntarily when they're through hypnosis, when they're hypnotized. So when you're in that state, you become sort of hyper suggestible, and so any little noise, anything you hear, even the electrical signals, what's going on in your brain, can produce sounds, like audible sounds to you, that will then, like, your mind will feed off of it, and they'll create like a visual image. And this is what ties in actually to a lot of alien abductions, and when people see the Greys and they're standing over them in their room, and they're doing experiments on them and stuff like that. It's that feeling that there's a presence there, and it ties into what people probably experience when they smoke DMT, which goes back to what we were talking about last week.
thing. I mean, it's a mystery in itself, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
we haven't been able to recreate in the lab in the circuit boards yet. I mean, that's what's amazing about it.
Yeah, so I think my point I'm trying to say is that because of these unusual phenomena and the things that go on, you know, in that sort of in between state between sleep and awake, and when people, you know, could have visions and dreams and stuff, these things have probably they've probably fed into myths and cultural superstitions, and you know, in Islamic tradition, there's the Iblis, who was like the devil. It's like their devil, and they'll tell the kids, you know, clean your ears and clean between your toes, otherwise Iblis will come, and because he likes to eat the germs and the dirt between your toes. Now think about it, like, you're scaring the hell out of the kid, but what are you doing? You're trying to, it's like the boogeyman, you know, but you're using it so that to try and direct behavior, you know, to try and keep them good so that they're not naughty, just like they would threaten with Krampus, you know, or
just
or
like
just like Christians do with the devil, you know.
That's like I tell the kids, yeah, keep your arms out there. Keep your arms out there. The truck's gonna come and take it. It's gonna be pretty hard to play Call of Duty.
Yeah. So we scare people. We scare people with the extremes, and then sometimes create characters to sort of enforce good behavior or punish bad behavior, to deter bad behavior. And this is the source and the origin of a lot of folklore, a lot of superstitions and mythology. A lot of it goes back to what people never really understood, you know, the real causes behind things. And you have correlations, you know, like the number 13. You have the black cats, the superstitions, you know, breaking a mirror, spilling the salt. There are real reasons why these things kind of came about, like came to become, you know, so fearful, you know, the idea of knock on wood, stuff like that. There's real
opening umbrellas inside houses.
What's that?
Or opening umbrellas inside houses. That was supposed to be bad luck, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All these things have their origins and probably correlations that people made where they did something and then something bad happened and it had nothing to do with what they did, and you have the beginnings of magical thinking. This is how magical thinking develops. So you know, have a superstitious correlation with something, and then it gets reinforced. It gets reinforced because you already believe it. I mean, and this is literally how all religions operate. You know, you whatever you see, whatever's going on in the world around you, you attribute to the supernatural forces that you've already kind of invented, and then it gets reinforced because now you think that you know the reasons behind why people act the way they do. Why they're a lot of people who experience possession, or they think that they're possessed, you know. They're always religious people. They're always people who are hyper religious, and they end up acting out and acting exactly like they would think a person who is possessed would act. They act exactly like what they think, you know, a demon would act like. And then when they have an exorcist come in, or they do some prayers and spells and rituals over them, it's basically what it is like spells. Then as the placebo effect works, you know, it's all psychosomatic. So you believe that you're getting better, and then you actually will get better, and the symptoms will cease. But it's all psychological, man. It's exactly the case. What happened with Annalise Michel. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, but she was the real story of a Russian girl, a Ukraine girl that was the inspiration for The Exorcism of Emily Rose, that movie. With Dexter's sister. I forgot her name, the actress. But like it's such a sad story because like this girl literally like starved herself. She was eating spiders. She was like bashing her knees, you know, like falling on the ground like in prayer, and like just like beating herself up, and went through this horrible ordeal. And these dumbass priests like just went there, and they kept trying to exorcise her demons and perform the exorcisms on her, and she eventually died of a whole like amalgamation of horrible sort of self-inflicted wounds and you know dehydration and starvation and stuff. And all of that, okay, came about because she was ultra religious. Her parents were like super Orthodox Catholic, and she probably held a lot of guilt for, you maybe she was in a relationship. I think she was in a relationship right before this happened, and maybe she probably was fornicating, and she felt super, super guilty about it. So it manifested in a psychological way as her being possessed, her being evil, and then it even got warped and twisted so that she was thinking that she was a martyr and that she was doing this. She was suffering for the sake of others. Well, that's the whole Christian mentality right there. Is you suffer the mortification of the body, and the real shit kicker of this is she was probably schizophrenic. So instead of treating her with medication, and instead of having her under observation in a hospital and actually addressing psychological and physical problems, they went the spiritual route, and it ended up killing her. And it's super sad, super tragic. You can look it up and research, see the pictures of her. Her eyes are all black, and you can hear the audio, and it's pretty creepy. Okay, a religious person, if they would listen to the audio of Annalise when she's screaming and growling and stuff, it'll give you chills. It'll freak you out if you kind of open your mind to the idea that might be really devils and demons in her. But then at the same time, when you understand the backstory of it, you're just oh, this is a horrible tragedy. These stupid religious people who are the superstition just reinforces the delusion. That was the case. That was the problem with that situation, and it happens all the time. It happens in other countries. It happens in Africa, where people are much more engrossed in kind of tribalism and voodoo and hoodoo. Anyway, I don't want to ramble, so you guys just jump in whenever.
When it comes to religion, I'd say one of the most peaceful ones, if there are any peaceful ones at all, will probably be Buddhism, because Buddhists believe they believe in peace and harmony, and the only afterlife that they believe in is reincarnation, like you were discussing earlier. I mean, I don't believe in a thing called karma, but just saying, what if it could be proven that we did get reborn as other animals, right? I wouldn't say karma exists, because that's what Buddhists believe in. Whatever you do in this life doesn't, it's not going to dictate what kind of punishment you get in the next life. I don't believe that there is a punishment in the next life or whatever. Right. I just believe if law of conservation supports the idea that we get reborn as other animals, we won't keep our memories, but we'll become like another life form. We'll become another species or whatever.
Right. So how then in that sense, how is it in any way us? It's just the life essence itself. It's just the life essence is manifested in different forms, in different species and stuff. Because there's no animal that has the memory of a human. Otherwise, they'd be trying to communicate with us, right? Hey.
Yeah, they'd find a way to communicate with us if they previously had been a human. I'm sure.
Yeah, as you said, there's no memory of it. So in a sense, it's not. There's a reincarnation of life in the sense that life regenerates and recycles. But in terms of a consciousness, in terms of a coherent personality, I don't believe that there is any. There's no evidence, or there's no compelling evidence. There's no verifiable evidence that conclusively states that there is anything beyond this life.
Yeah.
And that's why
in a sense, guys,
there's no proof currently, but it's still. I'm just wondering if it's worth investigating, because
it should be investigated. It should be investigated, absolutely, because there are many things that point to not a continuation of life or a continuation of consciousness, but that consciousness may not be local to just the body. In terms of remote viewing, psychic phenomena, things like that, there are evidences that would suggest that people can sort of extend their consciousness beyond just their body. But that's still attributable to a living organism, not someone that's passed on. You see what I'm saying? So I think it's more of a living phenomenon than an afterlife.
Yeah. And it's still nothing to do with Buddha. I'm not a Buddhist or anything. I don't believe in karma, like I said. Whatever we do in this life will not have any spiritual ramification on what will happen in the next life, because there are no spirits. It's just
remember, the whole concept of karma and dharma and reincarnation that came about in India and the Hindu religion because they looked and they saw certain people were suffering and other people, were privileged. Certain people were had, the worst luck, and other people seemed to just like flourish. And they were trying to make sense of it all and saying, well, what did these people do to deserve this? Maybe it was something they did in another life. Maybe there's this, because they had this idea, this kind of pantheistic concept of there's a continuation of life, a recycling of life. So what they did is they kind of they used it and kind of exaggerated on what the reality is, and they said, well, they were alive and they were something else, and then like every other religion, they created a mythology around it. And it was also, in a negative sense, it was used so that you're not supposed to help people in a lot of Hindu traditions, because otherwise you're interfering with their karma. You have to allow them to work off their karma, so that they can progress in the next life, so they can make progress and go forward. And so in many ways, it actually stifled humanitarian like a humanitarian mentality to develop, and you would let people suffer and let people go through whatever they're going through, because that was their lot, that was their karma. And that I don't believe in that. I think that's really unhealthy. And with the Buddhist traditions, I agree with you, Jamie, that it is all about peace and compassion, and developing balance and understanding equanimity. But at the same time, like, it's all about denying yourself, like the desires are the source of suffering. It all revolved around trying to eliminate suffering. So the way to eliminate suffering is you eliminate the desires, and then you don't have to. Well, I don't believe that we should annihilate ourselves, and our desires are there and they guide us and they direct us. I think our desires are a good thing. Everything should just be done in balance, So there's much I agree with.
Things should be done in sustainability. That's what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a comment about the whole karma and reincarnation thing. That idea that somebody deserves what they're getting in this life based on something they did in their past life. I mean, of course, it does depend on the belief in deserve. It depends on the free will myth in and of itself to think that somebody can deserve something.
Exactly. Buddhists still believe in free will to some extent, because otherwise, where's the justification for punishment?
Yeah, I was gonna say then this goes against free will. If you believed in karma and dharma and all that, I believe it's just a way to explain suffering. Is to explain why people are in the positions that they are in life, why certain people are less fortunate, why other people seem to be blessed, and that's their way of explaining it. And it also becomes a motivating factor to do good, to try and like excel and reach these greater levels of consciousness, So let's switch gears and talk about let's see. I was gonna say, could we maybe discuss the idea of modern day myths and kind of like, like sort of scientific theories. Like what if our scientific theories, like the Big Bang and gravity and electromagnetism and all these things that we know are just the fundamental laws of nature, could they just be like what modern humans have now come to believe? And really it's because it's based on the evidence that we have, but maybe there's actually a wider picture. Maybe there's more to it. And this is actually modern day folklore and mythology is the things that science tells us. I know if Trick was here, he'd be like having a conniption. He'd be like, it's evidence for it, and it's tested,
Yeah.
But like I'm saying there are things that we absolutely we take on faith. We listen. We take on faith the things that science tells us. Scientists tell us this, and we just believe them. And we look for the evidence, and we can see the statistics and stuff. But we are pretty much taking these modern day shamans. We're taking their word for it.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic.
I'm just playing devil's advocate because I do believe in science, but I'm just saying it's an interesting thought.
I do. I support science as well. I support the scientific method in that we should investigate claims, because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the afterlife thing, that's a pretty big if. I'll put a big if on that one, because it's far less likely to be true than aliens, for example. Aliens have a almost statistical certainty to exist. So.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Maybe the encounters that people are describing might not be extraterrestrials. They could be some form of psychological projection or experience. But absolutely, there are countless worlds out there. We know
Yeah,
they're not aliens.
intelligent
Drake's
life out
equation.
there.
Yeah.
There's just life forms. They're just planets. And given the laws of physics, and the penchant toward life that I believe exists in the universe, there's absolutely other life forms out there. Who knows?
Yeah, because I believe, like I said, it could be intelligent.
So what I just said.
It could be an intelligent
Interestingly
dog out
enough,
there. It could be intelligent. Hell, it could be a bunch of intelligent roaches out there. Even though I hate roaches.
yeah, check out the movie Mimic. It's all about that.
Yeah, well, what Poffo
Already
was
I've seen
saying.
that.
Yeah, what Poffo was saying about how scientists say things and people just believe them. Like there is a certain danger to where, yeah, like we don't want to just take everything on just faith. You know what I mean? Like how that is because.
Well, just from authority, you mean?
Yeah, basically, yeah, because first of all, people are in the habit of doing that with their religious leaders. Whatever their religious leaders tell them is true, they just believe it without questioning. And then I think sometimes it just goes to just listening to whatever the scientists say and believing them, which I think could be equally dangerous because that could be misused in all sorts of ways.
Oh, of course.
We have to trust somebody because they're doing the work. They're out there with with doing the measurements and they're doing the tests and the experiments. So, I mean, we would hope that scientists, aren't lying to us and don't have nefarious purposes. Did you want to say something, Jamie?
Yeah, I was going to say sometimes scientists say things that are wrong, but when they get disproven, it's usually by scientists who have greater knowledge. You know what I mean?
Right, and they're supposed to just update their theory and they recognize that knowledge and information are emergent, so they they applaud anyone that can prove them wrong because that's progress and we move forward, and that's the scientific method. There's some people that say scientists don't do that. They're set in their ways and they're very, very obstinate towards making progress about certain things that are well established because they have too much invested in those theories and models. But that is the scientific method. That's what they should do. Is they should update their information. Like I said, I don't believe in an afterlife. Like Jamie doesn't believe in an afterlife. But if evidence becomes available, absolutely, we will. I think it's the most fascinating thing ever. We should totally be open to it and open to exploring it. But I'm not going to teach it. I'm not going to promote it. I'm not going to lie to people and try and comfort them when I don't have, when I'm not privy to that information. I wanted to say earlier that this was kind of an important sort of segue back to this idea of cultural myths. And, in ancient times, people believed in leprechauns and spirits and sprites and fairies and brownies and goblins and banshees, and every culture had these had these sort of manifestations of the unknown. Okay, and now we have aliens. So instead of like leprechauns, we have like the Greys, and they scare the shit out of me. I don't know if you guys know this, but I am scared of one thing: aliens. Like the way that they look, they like these giant almond eyes, the black eyes, and they're like big, sort of insect looking. They're very skinny, and they
look silly to me.
No, dude, you don't understand. Like I am actually petrified of that happening, of being abducted, of like just waking up and seeing them standing over my bed, just because it's as simple as this, dude. It's just the aesthetic, because they look like fetuses or something. They look like emaciated, like baby fetuses. I can't explain, with a large head. There's something so humanoid about them that it creeps me out. But my point is, they're tapping into something, because that terrifies like so many people. And it makes you wonder. Let's say, like in the in Islamic tradition, they have the jinn, and the jinn can take on any form and can sort of. There's some people that have this sort of theory of everything, where they believe that every single paranormal phenomenon or every kind of cryptid, cryptozoology, or a creature that we see, or anything that's unusual or strange, can actually be attributed to the jinn, because they're like these shape-shifting. They're the genie, the genie of legend and Islamic and Arabic traditions. So
Oh, not the genie, great wishes.
The jinn, no, not exactly. That got changed over time. But the jinn were actually these malevolent, very powerful. They were made. Let's see, they were made before humans, but they were made after the angels. And like humans are made of earth, angels are made of light, and jinn are made of fire. They're made of the smokeless fire.
Oh man, I've encountered this in video games. Like, yeah, there was this video game. It was I think it was called Star Wish or something like that. And yeah, there was these different races of these creatures that were made of earth, wind, fire, air, all those different, the four elements, and yeah, the jinni were made of fire or something like that.
Right. Yeah, the jinn were considered like these powerful beings that could take on any form and would kind of manipulate. And the Iblis, the Islamic version of the devil is Iblis, and he refused to
wizards, basically.
He refused to bow to humans to the humans, and that's how he was sort of he roams the earth now, tempting people. This is the same exact. It's a parallel story to the Judeo-Christian Satan. But what I was trying to say was this idea that like we now have these different encounters, these different experiences where in ancient times, their imagination only allowed for a certain manifestation of their fear, whether it be a brownie, a sprite, as I said, like if it was a leprechaun, I'm trying to think of some other mythological creatures, some interesting ones. But like, now, since we're like in the age of technology, now we don't see these things in the dark, in the deep, in the woods, because the woods have been explored. We know that there's nothing out there but animals. So we actually see them. The only netherworld that is left is sort of the other dimensions that could possibly exist, or maybe from outer space. Or what I'm trying to say is the unknown remains like the place where monsters and creatures and these manifestations of our fears reside, because we haven't yet explored it. We don't yet like this the scientific revolution, and we've gone out in space, and we know that God is no longer there. So in ancient times, when we say, oh, God is up there, God is in the heavens, or God is up on Mount Olympus, like it's always whatever is just beyond our reach of comprehension, or our reach of understanding. So the unknown is always inhabited by our fears, our insecurities, even our hopes and dreams come from the unknown. So in the same sense, nowadays, what are people afraid of now, and what are their fears and sort of their carnal the universal motifs that have existed. What's that?
The one I'm afraid of?
What's that?
Man.
Humans? Yeah.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
That's a healthy fear. That's healthy.
I mean, the invention of a nuclear bomb was one of the worst things we ever did. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Why you think I'm so afraid of man? Fear man.
Yeah. That's a healthy, rational fear. Is our destructive qualities, the potential we have to eliminate all life on Earth. I guess all I was trying to say, I hope it wasn't too verbose. I was just trying to say that I do believe there are superstitions and sort of mythologies that exist now in our culture, in our present culture, that are probably the same projections, like the same. They're coming from the same source, but given our knowledge in modernity, like what we are capable of imagining now has sort of transitioned and become something else. So now, instead of seeing little lights in the woods, we see spaceships, we see flying saucers. Instead of seeing, I don't know, a minotaur or some kind of a werewolf out in the forest, we see Bigfoot, because it fits in with our concept of some kind of evolutionary, some kind of primate that has like stayed off the radar. It makes sense. It can be rationalized, and if we live back then, all the witches and the harpies and the spirits and the things that they believed in can be completely rationalized based on their limited amount of knowledge. So based on our knowledge now, what is possible to exist? Well, Loch Ness monster. Well, it might be possible that there is a plesiosaur or a giant eel, or some kind of ancient reptile or dinosaur that still exists, in those dark waters. So if we can imagine it, then it remains, And I know some people that still believe in fairies and stuff. There's people. I listen to Coast to Coast. On the Coast to Coast AM, and that's all they cover is like paranormal phenomenon and cryptozoology and conspiracy theories and ghosts and aliens and psychic phenomenon. So it kind of keeps you open minded, but you got to weed through all the bullshit because there's just so much woo woo and fiction and mythology mixed
Here's
in.
a funny
it's really
thought, guys.
It's really interesting. A lot of people still believe in this stuff, like cultural traditions, cultural myths persist.
Here's a funny thought, guys. In light of how people seem to like scary fiction and they believe in all these scary myths of all these weird things, here's just a wild guess, but maybe they're trying to make something scarier than humans to distract themselves from how scary humans are.
I think that there is truth to that, in the sense that we're trying to occupy, entertain ourselves, distract ourselves from everyday life, distract ourselves from the pressures and the stresses and the sort of the insecurities and the fears of everyday life. Sure. Like you don't have to, you spend 2 hours in a movie and you don't have to think about, that your bills aren't going to get paid, or that you're having problems with your wife or your kids are doing drugs, and I don't know, like it's an escape. It's definitely like a way to kind of cope by immersing yourself in a fantasy realm for a while. And I believe movies are therapeutic. I think they're really, I mentioned this, I think, on the last podcast, that I feel that when you see sort of these life and death struggles played out, and there are these characters that you identify with, it actually taps into like who you are. It taps into like what's going on in your life, and it kind of speaks to you. Like I guess it's a form of meditation for me. Who would ever think, right, that watching movies is like meditative? But for me it is, because it makes me think when I'm watching it on the screen, whatever it might be, the characters portrayed and the scenarios and the situations, it makes me think about my life. It makes me grateful. It makes me thankful for what I have. It makes me kind of put myself in the character's shoes. So I think, what would they do if they were in my life? Like, with certain decisions. So it's like a form of meditation. It's also an escape, and it's probably also a way to ease our anxieties, like you said, Chandler.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you mentioned before, like the struggle between good and evil and all that. And I think it's kind of an interesting concept, because I don't know. I certainly don't look at there actually being like a struggle between good and evil, as in that there's good and evil people or life forms necessarily, even anymore, if you know what I'm saying.
No, sure, yeah. That's a personification. When we watch like the Lord of the Rings, it's so easy to kind of like not feel compassion for the orcs, because they're so foul. They represent, Sauron and Saruman. They represent like this sort of exaggerated form of what would be like power, control, domination, lack of empathy, lack of respect for nature. That's what they represent. So it's very easy, and they're ugly, like visually. So you can identify, you can see, yeah, those are the bad guys. And then you've got like the struggling humans, or the dwarves, or the elves, or the hobbits, and they represent, each race actually represents an aspect of humanity. The elves represent sort of the highest ideal of living in connection with the earth and in cohesion with nature, and everything.
Yeah, I always kind of like the elves.
Yeah, everything they build and design is sort of permaculture, and they have magic, and they have sort of a wisdom that is almost ethereal, and it transcends this earth. And then in contrast, you have the dwarves, who are very like hardy and sort of gruff and tough, and they're great warriors, but they love their gold, and they hoard wealth, and they're very, very sort of earthy and grounded and stubborn, and like they represent sort of that kind of stubborn but hardy kind of pig-headedness of humanity. and sort of simple-minded in some ways, and then you get the hobbits, and they're just the simple-minded folk, and they kind of represent like the pagans or the human beings who just want to live a simple life and are very love good food, kind of Epicurean in a way, and love good food and love drink and love family and love gardening and tending to green things. So it represents sort of the hippie. Plus they're barefoot, so they're kind of like hippies, What?
Kind of like the regular folk in our world. I mean.
Yeah, they're all parallels to, and I guess the greater point is, so when you watch these sort of personifications of different character traits and different aspects of humanity, it touches you, and it touches you in a very deep way. It's like the language of symbolism, and it's speaking to you in a very powerful way, and it simplifies everything. You don't have all the complexities that you have in everyday life when you're watching a fantasy film or a horror film, or you're seeing something that's totally sort of simplified, and it makes it's black and white, and everything makes sense. So I'm trying to tie it back to what you said, Chandler, that life is much more complicated. There's many more gray areas in between, and when we watch films and stuff, it's all kind of it's sort of simplified for us so we can identify with it, and it speaks to us in a more powerful way. In everyday life, no, there isn't just good and evil. You have evil actions and you have good actions, and you have humans who are capable of doing both. I mean, literally, like in the span of 5 minutes, you can both be an angel and a demon at the same time, based on your desires, your thoughts, the struggle that's going on inside you. So that's what films and fantasy and fiction and stuff kind of do, and even horror. It helps to kind of focus and distill the greater sort of the polarities that exist within all human beings.
Exactly. I mean, you could say in fiction, free will stuff kind of makes some stories interesting. Say for comic heroes, for example, in order to make sense of like heroes and villains and comic stories, you have to have like responsibility in a deep sense,
Yeah, and you bring up a great point about like superheroes are the personification, the ideal of what we want to be in so many ways. With Superman, Batman, what all these Spider-Man, what they represent is represent us, But like what we could do, if we had, if we had the power, if we had the capacity, it's an ideal for us to follow, and it inspires us, and that's a huge thing, because that is modern day mythology. That what if we no longer have sort of as elaborate as say the Greeks and the Romans mythology was, or even the Sumerians or the Egyptians, their mythology, their belief systems were just entrenched in all these characters and gods and goddesses, this whole pantheon of events and characters and things that no one, maybe it started with a benevolent healer like Asclepius or something, but like no one can really verify it. They're just these stories that convey sort of moral messages, and that's very important. So that's what comic books and film are for us today, is that is a mythos, that the Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, these characters, what they represent are these ideals, and they have become our new mythology. They're the current form of mythology, because I tell you what, some people, I mean, with Star Wars fans or Lord of the Rings nerds or whatever they are, they it's a religion to them. The Star Trek fans, the Trekkies, it's a religion. They absolutely, like, it's the most important thing, and they'll get pissed off if you like misquote a character, or they, like, you know what I'm saying? They'll jump down your throat because it's so real. It has such significance to them, and there's a reason behind that. We're not just talking about people who are trying to escape reality. Maybe that's a part of it, as we said, but we're talking about, why is it that these stories, cultural myths, like the bards that they would tell stories in song, these things are so enduring. I believe it's because they're necessary. They actually teach us things, moral lessons. They set ideals. It's almost like having role models, like the superheroes represent role models to us. So exactly. I think that's a good thing. It's healthy.
Well, that's an interesting thought about that, is that because for the purpose of making fiction, like in movies, and now here's one thing I want to clarify, is that some of these old myths that people have believed in ancient times, and some still do, we don't really know how they developed exactly because it's ancient history. But people do know when they come up with Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, or Powerpuff Girls or Sailor Moon, or Dragon Ball Z, all these different cartoons, superhero type things.
Yeah.
This is modern times. People intentionally put these stories together. Teams of people worked on them for the purpose of making fiction, which is part of why it's so efficiently done, because they develop these characters to be a certain thing, and it shows that it's intentional, that this is meant to be a good person, this is meant to be a bad person.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
Yeah, every Transformers,
heroes are good role models.
He-Man, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Killing is dishonorable unless it's in self-defense. So.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Oh, I wanted to ask Poffo since
Batman, Batman, he doesn't kill.
Yeah.
I don't know how he
just
with
breaks
that.
your arm. Yeah, he just.
Or in Dragon Ball Z, Goku doesn't kill people unless he really has to.
Oh,
yeah, that was interesting.
Do I have to bring up Frieza?
Yeah.
What were you saying? What were you saying, Chandler?
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask Poffo, since he seems so. Poffo, you seem so knowledgeable about all these myths and stuff. I was wondering if you had anything to say about dragons or unicorns.
Dragons and unicorns. Well, dragons obviously came from Europe. There was almost every culture actually has some kind of concept of a giant serpent or a giant reptilian creature. In Asian cultures in the East, dragons are actually considered these sacred, powerful representations of power and intelligence, and it's completely different in Europe. They were like this horrible this horrible thing to be feared, and there was all these legends and stuff that surrounded it. But it makes you wonder, where did it originally come from? If there were no dragons that have ever coexisted with humans, but there were dragons that lived on this earth, okay, and we call them dinosaurs. And if you can imagine someone from antiquity coming across these gigantic reptile bones and like skulls and with these massive teeth, like think of a T-Rex, or any of these giant great lizards that lived on this planet. And they had no knowledge of archaeology and how to put the bones together and stuff. I mean, I know many people think that the origin of
I understand how that, but I still understand where they got the wings from.
Right. I'll get to that in a second. Hang on. Like the origin of the Cyclops mythos could have been from like a woolly mammoth that has sort of the nasal cavity is one big hole, and when they look at that giant skull, they would say, "Oh, this is a giant beast that has only one eye." See, so like in the same sense, when they'd find the dinosaur bones and they weren't really apt on how to put them together or anything, they didn't understand, biology. They probably just filled in the blanks with their imagination. So you got this idea that dragons, well, here's the skeleton, and we know that it existed, and what did it look like, and where did it come from? And so they filled in all the unknown with their stories, with their mythology. As far as unicorns, the narwhal has a spiral horn. These whales that live in Antarctica or in the Arctic, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know.
In these polar regions, they live. So you find a narwhal horn, and I would say, I'm not sure if the unicorns tie in with Nordic folklore and culture, but they're definitely sort of a European myth. But they all kind of overlapped. So you could have found this horn. You could have found a horse skeleton nearby, because there's continents, and with plate tectonics, everything shifts, and you could find bones in layers that are millions of years apart, and you wouldn't know if you didn't understand archaeology and the anatomy of animals. So again, I think that they're finding skeletons of either extinct animals or animals that still exist, and they're not putting them together properly, and you have the basis for the mythos, for the mythology.
Yeah, well, here's an interesting thought. Now, like, first start with the dragons. Like, there were flying dinosaurs, were there not?
Oh, sure, yeah. The pterosaurs.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, but they didn't look anything like dragons. It just looked like birds with yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting nowadays in the cartoons, the movies, the video games, there's a certain established look that the dragons have. They have a certain look, like this
Right.
thing has all been standardized by this point,
Right.
but it's like a combination of different things. Like they have wings that seem to resemble something kind of like a dinosaur or something, and they breathe.
Bat wings usually have bat wings. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
here's another thing.
They're chimeras. They're like combination of different animal parts. I was gonna say the reason that maybe why they considered them to have wings is because everything back in the ancient times they thought that was powerful had wings. That's why angels had wings. Anything that sort of transcended earthly realms, that was greater than the average Joe or the average animal, was considered to have wings, and that's how they just having wings represented power and transcendence. So that might have been how it was incorporated in.
Yeah, and the unicorn thing. What's interesting about that is that the only real difference between a unicorn and a regular horse is that silly horn. It is kind of funny, but I still think, hey, who knows if there was some horse-like creature that had a horn, because there's
Dude, I'll tell you what's fascinating. Everything you could ever imagine probably has already existed on this planet. What's more interesting than the dinosaurs to me are the mammals. Like the mammals and the creatures that came after are so fascinating, man. There were these giant sloths, and there was like I'm trying to think. They were all gigantic because the atmosphere was different. The gravity was different then, and they could grow to be so large to support the weight. But there's so many fantastic mammals that existed after the dinosaurs that no one ever talks about. You never see real depictions of them and stuff, but it's so interesting that like they look like mythological creatures. I would love to actually get really deep into that and study that, or find a website or something that covers all that, because the actual animals that have existed on this planet, they have all of these characteristics, all these qualities that you think of in when it comes to mythology and mythological creatures and stuff. I believe they already existed in some way.
Think that
just exaggerated.
Yeah, I think most of these mythical creatures are actually extinct animals that were actually here before.
Right, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. And then of course the depictions are just human depictions, so we don't always get it right.
And here's another thing. Where did the breathing fire come from?
Oh, the fire-breathing dragons?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a few species of animals that kind of like have these well, the bombardier beetle kind of spits a little spark out of its butt. Yeah, out of its butt. It shoots a little flame out of its butt. Yeah, that's the only known one. But there are other creatures that may have spit some kind of venom or something, and then you can maybe see how, since the venom burned, had an acidic effect, how that could have been eventually exaggerated to the idea of fire. Or you could just say that, again, it's a fantastic, it's a powerful image. It's the idea of this creature. And so what is most powerful to people of ancient times? Well, it's the elements. That fire is such a powerful destructive force. It can fuel things, it can burn things. It's so so you're just adding, again, like the wings, you're adding these sort of destructive or powerful elements to the mix.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of species that are still undiscovered yet. I mean, we've got a whole universe.
Yeah, it's true too. There could be animals that right now, that's what cryptozoology is. There could be animals that are on this planet right now that are just completely fantastic and that no one would ever believe, but in remote areas that have yet to be discovered, especially in the oceans, and the deepest parts of the oceans are one of the
most bizarre life forms to me happens to be tube worms. The ones that live very far under the water.
Yeah,
they live at pressures 300 times atmospheric pressure, I believe.
It's amazing, and they're not squished. And they live off like sulfur and stuff from the vents that from the earth.
And it's cold down there as well. It's like ice.
Yeah, Yeah, these are like the extremophiles, and or the old Legends of the Kraken could have easily been a squid. You know, one of those giant squids that came up. I don't know why they'd be attacking
Yeah,
a
I kind
ship.
of seen that.
But you can see with all the tentacles and stuff, and if you don't see the rest of the animal in the water, then it's easy to kind of imagine and let your mind kind of go crazy with what it might be. I believe they say that's the origins of the mermaid, was a manatee or a dugong.
Yeah, I heard that.
Sailors would be out of it, and they would see this sort of humanoid looking thing with the tail, and it's floating in the water, or I could see that, but those faces, I mean, they they look like walruses or big dogs, like big bulldogs. So I can't imagine a attractive where they got the pretty attractive mermaid, the siren. It's fascinating though, the origins of all these things, and to them it was real. I mean, going back in the day, like you couldn't tell somebody that these things didn't exist. I mean, they were like, it was an established fact that that I don't know, like if you wandered too far into into this unexplored territory, you would get devoured by whatever, fill in the blank.
Or fall off the edge of the earth because thought the earth was flat.
Hey, Chandler Klebs,
Yeah.
You watch those David Attenborough documentaries, man, because I'm telling you something, right? You'll be surprised what kind of animals actually live in the dark oceans at those depths.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sure, man.
Well, like crabs. Crabs feed off the remains of dead whales that have sunk to the bottom. You know what I mean? So.
Huh. Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, I need to be
tons of animals that could be down there that are just living off of. They don't have to ascend at all. They can just stay down there, and so they could stay relatively the same for millions of years, and live off of the decomposing flesh and matter that sinks to the bottom.
Yeah.
And in addition, they also live near volcanoes as well, where they get enough heat to sustain them. So.
Hey guys, I really do need to get to bed soon here.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how we'd end this, because this is kind of an interesting talk.
Yeah, I was gonna try and take it back to if you guys had any kind of Halloween traditions that you like to do, or what what you guys do for the season. Like, if there's anything significant to you that like anything nostalgic or sentimental that you like to kind of rehash.
Here's an idea. I need to take a shower, guys. So what I could do is I could just leave my computer on while I do that, and it should still just be recording, and then one of you can close out the episode before you end the call.
Okay. Well,
yeah. So you can continue, because I got
WSD and Jamie wants to do that, or if you're down for that.
No problem.
Yeah, you guys can just continue.
What do you want me to say, Chandler?
Just close it. Just like sum up what you talked about or whatever. Just however you like. You can just kind of close it yourself this time, because I'm gonna be taking a shower and get ready for bed.
All right, brother. Thanks.
All right.
I appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Have a good one, man. Happy Halloween.
You too. Right. What was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, since Halloween,
Chandler's gonna have nightmares now.
Yeah.
He's gonna be scared.
Nope. Can't afford to have nightmares.
Yo.
Go ahead, Jamie. Go ahead.
I was going to say, since Halloween tends to be related to the supernatural and the paranormal and stuff, some people might see it as how shall I say, emotional time of the year where they remember loved ones and stuff.
Right. Well, definitely in certain cultures, you've got this whole idea of to commemorate the dead, to commemorate those who've passed on, and it's a time where we kind of focus on the past. We focus on those who have lived, and it's also the dying season of the earth, sort of. Anyway, in the northern hemisphere, it's the dying season where the trees are changing color and the leaves are falling. So it's kind of in pagan traditions, the focus goes, it shifts the focus to the latter half of life, where you're kind of winding down and you're getting older, and you're being more reflective and contemplative. So there's this concept of of remembrance, and remembering the loved ones, and
Well,
looking ahead to the resurrection, if that's what you believe,
Yeah. Well, in autumn or fall, as you call it in the United States, basically what trees do is they withdraw the chlorophyll from the leaves, and then they
Right.
prepare themselves for the winter. Not all trees do this. You get evergreens that keep their leaves all year
And
round.
palm trees.
Well,
Yeah.
I believe palm trees lose a lot of their the palm fronds. They fall, and I think they sort of close up too. They're not as green. They're pretty hardy though. I live in Southern California.
Yeah,
They're
because
everywhere.
I was down there. I was in Florida in February, and those things still look green to me.
It just depends on the weather. Obviously they can't. They won't survive if the temperatures really drop.
Yeah, but it's like 75 degrees down in Florida,
Right.
where I was up here. It's like 17.
Yeah, I was
degrees.
about to question that, because palm trees are not really used to non-tropical climates, so
Yeah.
Florida.
What were you saying? You were saying about the supernatural, Jamie. That so people are more focused on the supernatural world and on death, so to speak.
Well, some people like to remember lost loved ones. I mean, since it's supposed to be the festival of the dead anyway, so.
Right. There was All Saints Days with the Catholic Church sort of created to kind of combat Samhain, because it was around the same time of the year, and of course the church has to outdo everybody else and impose their holidays. It's like, okay, well, everybody's celebrating their loved ones and the dead, so let's make this All Saints Day and celebrate all the saints that have died, and we can focus on that, so we can get more converts. Can we say, oh, you can still celebrate your holiday, but let's just call it something else, and it's November 1st, All Saints Day. But that was the church's way of sort of getting as many followers as they could and gaining wealth and power, is by sort of what's the word, like complying with the existing traditions, and not forcing people to get rid of them altogether, but to sort of adopt new names and stuff. That was the church's way. Hey, you guys keep chatting. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick.
All right.
WSD, what you said about autumn in the northern hemisphere is correct. I mean, pine trees, don't they keep their leaves all year round?
Yeah,
Aren't they evergreen?
Not pine tree, palms, but I don't know.
No, I'm talking about pine. They got like funny shaped leaves, haven't they? They you get evergreens, and then you got.
I thought you were talking about the long chick with the weird look at. I don't know. Like execute.
I can't describe it, dude. You got these trees that have funny shaped leaves. They look like spikes, kind of. And
no. Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Those are palm trees.
Pine. No, not palm trees. I'm talking about pine trees, dude. You got evergreens that keep their leaves all year round, and then you got these other types of trees, coniferous or whatever they're called. They lose their leaves during fall, and then the trees prepare themselves. Like it's kind of like hibernation if you think about it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
In springtime, they regrow all their leaves, and
Hey, you guys, have you guys ever either of you had like any kind of weird paranormal experiences, or have you ever seen anything like a shadow person, or had missing time, or saw Bigfoot, or anything like that, or a ghost? You ever had an encounter with like a ghost, or feel a strange presence, anything like that?
Well, there's this one time.
What we might think would be a ghost,
Yeah, there's this one time that my thought I saw a werewolf in the house, but it turns out that was my father playing tricks.
You got dressed up as a werewolf?
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, I was obsessed with werewolves. I thought I was a werewolf. I would like run around and like rip my shirt off, and I think I got in trouble one time because I bit some girl in the arm in school. Like I had like crazy hair, and I was like really into this idea of tapping into like the primal, like the wildness. I loved animals and I loved wolves, and I was always fascinated by sort of the concept of just becoming that beast and just being so free and like running and especially like living at night, like being nocturnal. Like I'm a night person, like and I just love the idea of creatures of the night and when everyone else is asleep, and you know there's freedom there, you know, like it's very poetic to me. Like I'm in love with sort of the visuals and the aesthetics of moons and graveyards and like forests and woods and stuff that most people find creepy. Like I find beautiful. What about you, Jamie?
What was you talking about? Sorry.
Have you ever had any kind of weird, unexplained phenomenon happen to you, or anything that was unusual, or you know what people in modern culture would claim like to be a ghost or a spirit or a shadow person, or usually everybody knows somebody, or there's usually an anecdotal story somewhere, or every person kind of has an encounter or like a weird experience that from their past that they can recall.
No, I never had any weird experiences like that. I mean, anything that would seem out of place to me, or impossible, would only happen in a dream, wouldn't it? So.
You're saying just you've had weird dreams? That's it, just dreams?
Yeah, and the funny thing about dreams is that sometimes you just can't remember them, you know. Like
I've had some crazy ass dreams where I wake up and I feel like whatever it is that was in the dream is still kind of in the room with me, and like that transition. I'm fascinated by that hypnagogic state, like I mentioned earlier, that transition between like the dream world and waking reality. It's so interesting, like what happens to the mind and the brain during that time, that little bit of that weird doorway there, where that could be like what they call like the twilight zone, the twilight world, where in between sleep and awake, you know, anything can happen.
Every dream I remember, you know, the type of dreams I remember is those wet dreams.
Yeah.
Damn.
We'll let Chandler deal
with
that. That's so appropriate for us intellectuals.
Yeah.
But I can tell you,
it's a little out there, but you have to say it.
Well, yeah, those are the memorable ones for sure. Wake you up, you know, you get woken up because of it. I could tell you some stories, man. I could tell you driving through Roswell, right near Roswell, and first time I came out to California, and it was the strangest thing. It was my turn to drive. I was with two other guys, and I don't remember pulling off to the side of the road. I don't remember any of it. I just remember driving, and I was really tired, and it was my turn. You know, behind the wheel, and the next thing I know, I wake up. Okay, I wake up, and I'm in the back seat, and we're all asleep, and we're just in the middle of the desert, and we're just like, what the hell happened? Like, I don't even remember pulling over. It's really odd for me because I'm usually a light sleeper, and I don't have like blackouts and stuff. Well, we end up driving into the next gas station, and we're looking on the map to figure out like where we are, and we're like, wait a minute, like, are we right near Roswell? We're in New Mexico right now. So this old man, it's like this creepy old man, comes around the counter just like in a movie, and he's like, where are you boys headed? And we're like, I don't know, we're headed to California, but I'm trying to find this is like the famous the alien crash site, and all this stuff went on, and he's like, oh yeah, it's right down the road, you must have driven past it in the night. And we just like looked at each other, and we're like, what? Like, because we had no memory of stopping, and especially me, I was driving. I don't remember pulling over at all. And I felt really weird. I felt like I had like some weird dreams that night. So who knows, man? Like, when it comes to like alien abductions, I've had aunts tell me stories of like weird experiences where they a great aunt of mine, she was taking out the garbage, and she was just taking the garbage to the end of the street, to the end of the driveway, and she goes out there and does that, and then she comes back, and then like her husband's like, she's like, where the hell have you been? I'm worried sick. Like I'm calling the neighbors. Like I was about to call the cops. This is crazy. How could you do this to me? And she's like, what? She's like, what are you talking about? Like I just went to the end of the driveway and back. And he's like, it's been 3 hours. She's like, it's been 3 hours. Look at the clock. And she's like, oh my God. Like, all I remember is walking to the edge of the driveway, and I think I looked up at the stars, and then I came back, and that's it. And she had no memory of any of that. And it's basically what in the UFO world they would term missing time. And later on in life, I think she died of cancer. She died at a young age. She started losing her hair and had a lot of medical problems. And so a lot of people in my family kind of theorized that maybe she was abducted and they did some stuff to her. They did tests on her. Now, there could be a perfectly logical explanation for it. It could be like, just a weird lapse in consciousness, or even the government could abduct people and erase their memories. But it definitely happened, and I don't know. There's no explanation for it.
All right, WSD.
Yeah.
About the tree thing, I was wrong about what I said earlier. It's actually deciduous trees that lose their
yeah, because I knew the palm tree was a spiky one.
No, dude, you misunderstand. But palm trees are not evergreen. If they were in like colder climates, they would lose their leaves, dude.
Yeah.
Pine trees, on the other hand, are evergreen. You know the spiky, tall, the tall
like
trees,
Christmas trees, like Christmas trees, like firs.
Yeah, like Christmas trees. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, pine trees. They got a smell. They got a scent to them as well. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I remember driving my father.
Yeah.
I remember driving my father, and this was kind of creepy because we were driving through North Carolina, right? It was coming from North New Jersey, and we tried to get down to Florida because he's moving down.
Right.
And when we was driving, I swear, we felt like when we got to North Carolina, it was so dark. I swear we felt like we were driving into a void. There was just one point where the road, the line, the lanes would disappear.
Yeah.
I'm like,
have you ever seen? Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Did you want to like the scariest film ever? Like, In the Mouth of Madness. In the Mouth of Madness. It reminded me of a scene in that film, John Carpenter. It's a brilliant film with Sam Neill and that girl from Fright Night 2. But like, check that out, man. It's a totally like total mindfuck. That movie will mess with your head. It's so psychological and creepy. It actually scared me. Like it was there's moments and there's aspects of that film that still kind of like they stay with you. But check it out. Like extremely scary.
Yeah.
The Mouth of Madness. Yeah, it's like a nod to Lovecraft, because his short story, the longer one of his short stories is at the mountains of madness.
Where you feel like I'm driving into a void.
He's driving, and it's awesome because the lights, the lane disappears.
Yeah,
like
keep in mind we're in North Carolina. We're in North Carolina. There's no lights.
Yeah.
Well, except the headlights.
He keeps going and through this repetitive pattern, and he's trying to get out of the town, and he can't get out. And I don't want to give it away, but definitely I would recommend that as one of the creepiest movies to watch. In the Mouth of Madness. It'll make you question everything, question reality. Jacob's Ladder is another one. Jacob's Ladder is like brilliant. Not even really considered horror, more like a suspense, psychological, but really creepy imagery in that film. No, those are the ones that I like that like make you think, and like really strong visuals and good makeup and stuff. I was trying to think of some other stuff. I've actually had many experiences where I'm laying in bed. I have this in between sleep and awake, state where either I'm experiencing sleep paralysis and I'm trying to like move and I can't move, and it feels like all this pressure on my chest. And then I'll hear something off to the corner, or like something. I feel like there's something going on, but I can't perceive it. And then my mind will like visually, I'll see things. Probably at least 5 or 6 times I've had these experiences where I start to see something, where I'm looking up at my ceiling and the shadows kind of morph, and I feel like the shadows kind of are like alive, and they can sense that I'm looking at them, and they shift and change. This could all be my eyes, just playing tricks on me. But I've actually woken up and seen like a figure standing in my room, like the dark shadow, right, like near the foot of my bed. And then as soon as I saw it, it like lowered itself down and kind of like evaporated into the rest of the shadow. And I just threw a pillow at it, like screamed, and I threw my pillow at it. and then I went back to sleep. And it's so crazy because, like, if you saw something like that, why would you go back to sleep, right? But it's just in the state that you're in, it's weird. And then some other weird stuff happened later that day. But like I experience that all the time. You kind of see things like you're dreaming, you're awake, but you're still dreaming, you know, and your mind just plays tricks on you with sounds and sights and sort of thoughts. Like you create like backstories to every little sound, every little thing you see or hear. But go ahead. What?
You know another theory?
Yeah. What's that?
This could all be a simulation.
Simulation?
Yeah, life could just be a simulation.
Oh, a simulation. Yeah. Yeah, that's like the Matrix. Like we're all really in these pods, and they're just sucking the life juice out of us. Yeah. Actually, in pandeism, they account for all. Pandeism is essentially pantheism, the belief that all of nature is divine. But pandeism explains our origins by saying that God existed at one point in time and literally became the physical universe and no longer exists. So they have this explanation for all paranormal phenomenon, like all visions and ghosts and monsters and whatever, anything that's kind of weird, like a glitch in the Matrix, like anything that's out of the ordinary and surreal, and all these sort of tales that you hear, all these ancient folk tales and just phenomenon that are unexplained that occupy the minds of all these people that are into the paranormal. What these things really are really just manifestations or kind of like slips. It's hard to explain, but like a slip in the framework or the structure of this matrix, like that. If nature itself is kind of like the unconscious body of God, then at certain times, like when things happen that aren't that are beyond normal, that are considered paranormal, these are really just elements of nature that are kind of like slipping out, like this. If God is like this infinite being that can do anything and is capable of anything, and it's limits of your imagination. So when things happen that go against what would consider natural law or natural experience, they attribute it to the fact that everything is really this like sleeping God. So when something manifests, it's like it's just a little bit of that essence is slipping out, that essence that has all this creative potential to make an environment, to make a world, to form an animal, to be all the things that the universe is. The universe is kind of like it's always operating on a certain program, and then sometimes at different moments people can kind of tap into that creative power, and so something unusual or extraordinary will manifest, if that makes sense. You guys can understand that? So they have that they account for all paranormal activity and supposed supernatural phenomenon, and demons and angels and visions and ghosts and spirits and everything that's ever been labeled as supernatural or paranormal is really just sort of the quality of the universe that slips out, because it's like a dream. It's like you can create anything, you can do anything in a dream, and that's literally what nature is. It's this creative potential that sometimes kind of goes a little bit beyond its normal programming for whatever reason, and so that's how they attribute it. They account for it like that. I wish my friend John was on here. He could explain it better. He was the editor of the book that I just contributed to, Pandeism and Anthology, and he gets into it really deep on his website and many of his articles and stuff where he talks about this more. But it's interesting. It's an interesting explanation for it. It's just that it's almost like life has this potential to just be anything, and so it's just doing what it's doing now, and it's the normal world that we perceive. But sometimes that creative essence like slips out and kind of goes awry. What's that?
Bleeds out, you mean?
Yeah, it slips out and it kind of goes. It becomes abstract. It goes in a different direction, or you could say with the concept of parallel universes, that what we're experiencing, what we're seeing, is kind of a slip where you have an alternate dimension, another reality kind of like overlapping, and for a split second or for those few moments, we're seeing what exists in another universe, and it's bled into ours. It's bled into our own. Have you guys ever heard those theories?
Nope.
No. You should listen to Coast, man. You should listen to more. There's another one called Darkness Radio. They get really into that stuff. I really like the co-host of that, but they actually promote a lot more of the sort of supernatural. Coast to Coast is more like just everything. It's like a free for all. Like one night you'll have like a witch or someone who's like a Satanist. Another night you'll have a Christian who's talking about the end times. Another night you'll have someone investigating Bigfoot. Like another show will be about UFOs. Another show will be about psychic phenomenon or some kind of new age mysticism. So it's really all these things, like and they don't. It's neutral. It doesn't support or promote any particular belief. It kind of gives a platform for all different aspects of thought. Coast to Coast AM. Everybody, you can tune in on your radio station. You can listen to it online, but it's a great show. It really keeps you thinking. It keeps your mind keeps your mind active, thinking about all this stuff.
Yeah, I did send Chandler Klebs some David Attenborough DVDs a while back, and I do recommend that WSD sees his documentaries as well, because he does go into a lot of detail about how animal biology and plant biology works.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, I love David Attenborough. Yeah. I think he should be a mainstream educator, or should probably be part of the curriculum in schools, definitely.
Exactly.
And I don't know, to kind of tie it all together, I think I as attractive as these things are to me, and as I'm drawn to them, sort of in an activist sense, I would much rather people actually focus on the miracles and the miraculous things that exist in nature. Like, just focus on what actually exists, and really kind of highlight the wonders and the complexity, and there's so much in the animal kingdom and the plant world, and in biology and cosmology. There's so much that's absolutely just captivating and extraordinary. And even though I have these dualistic interests, as far as sort of humanitarian work or promoting my philosophy, I think that we should highlight the miraculous and what's the supernal things that exist in the real world, because there's so much. The only reason people actually seek these alternate realities, or these alternate interpretations of things, alternate interpretations of reality, is because they're unsatisfied and they're not happy with their everyday life, or they're oppressed, or they need an escape. They need to look to something beyond. And for those of us who are like sort of well-adjusted and balanced and healthy, we do this through film and fiction and stories. But for other people who literally have nothing and they're just miserable and they hate their reality, that's why they escape. So the supernatural world and the occult is much more appealing, and it's it becomes a necessity. They need to believe in something beyond, just to give them comfort and hope, and really make life more interesting, because like life is drudgery. It's harsh. It's hard. We struggle. Yeah, it sucks. So we escape into the fantasy. And so those of us who, like I said, are educated, we recognize that aspect of existence. But then those who are uneducated, it actually consumes them, and they literally believe the fantasy realm, and they take it too literally. They take it too seriously, and it becomes a part of their whole experience, even though there's like no evidence for any of it. It's just all psychosomatic and placebo effect. It's sad. I think we should really focus on the beauty and the wonders and the mystery. There's just so much mystery. There's so much to be explored in the real world, in forests and mountains, and in the ocean, and in our own bodies. There's incredible mysteries and incredible just incredible wonders that we could all be embracing and exploring. But it's fun to tell stories, and if those stories are compelling, then they if they have some universal significance, then people cling to them, and that's why like mythology and folklore and things endure, and it's just fun. Like I said, it's the same reason I like horror movies, because we want something that's unusual, we want something that's different.
Yeah, I mean, I would say fairy tales are great for entertainment. I mean, they're useful in that we can make stories using fictional characters.
And education too. Tell like a moral, have a moral. It gives a moral lesson that helps communicate. Like what you're trying to say. Instead of saying stealing is bad, lying is wrong, you be an honest person and be kind to people or cooperate. You can have a fictional story that can convey all that, and it speaks to us sort of on a creative, abstract level, so it stays with us longer than just reading those words. Like if I just read those words, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, don't kill, but then I tell a story, it's completely different. Like when you read the words, you're like, okay, I understand what those things mean. But when you see those things acted out and you see the drama, yeah. What's that?
Some fictional characters are role models for kids. That's why.
Yeah, superheroes, totally. Like that's what superheroes represent. Well, the hero's journey, there's always that the main character that undergoes some kind of ordeal, and you relate to it, and it speaks to you. And so I think there's value in it. There's a lot of value in power and myth and folklore. I wonder. This is one thing I wanted to cover, but I don't know if you guys will even be able to comment on it. Like, how would you ever consider it beneficial to sort of have a modern day myth, like a modern myth that is a myth, but you kind of use it to communicate, like as we said, like certain ideals and certain sort of like a biocentric ethic, or communicating to love and respect nature, to be compassionate, to care for the earth, things like that. These sort of ecological, environmental ethics. How would you guys feel if there was a kind of mythos that represented all that could be kind of promoted? And it's almost like, okay, well, we know that it's not true, but even if you thought it was true, it wouldn't hurt anything. Like it would actually empower sort of that movement or that ideal that you're trying to convey. How would you feel about that? Like if there was like a story that we can embrace as intellectuals, but without sort of believing in the supernatural, but embrace kind of a story that would help to communicate like these vital truths that would actually bring about a deeper and deeper levels of compassion toward other life forms, and recognizing our interconnectedness and our place as stewards of the planet. How would you feel about that? Like using mythology to kind of further a cause. So it's not so much that it's dishonest, but it's like if down the road people literally believe it, well, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Like it would actually kind of empower like that movement. How do you feel about that? That's how you feel about it.
Sorry. That was a cough, but
bless you. So, do you follow what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to think of examples.
I'm just trying to.
If you read the book Dune or watched the movie, like the main character Paul Atreides, he actually embodies sort of a cultural myth, like a prophecy was written, and it's not like necessarily he believes in it, but he allows himself. He becomes the fulfillment of it, and he uses it as a way to bring about a revolution. They look to him as the savior, like a messiah.
I can kind of see, as long as it's harmless.
Like if the ends justify the means, so to speak. I'm trying to think. There's been other science fiction and kind of fantasy films where the chosen one, like Neo in the Matrix. That's probably the most modern one. That like he doesn't really believe in the prophecy. He doesn't believe he's the one, what the Oracle tells him, but he becomes the one because of his own. He chooses to be the one, and he takes on that mantle. You understand that, like whether there is a one or not, and I think even they say it at one point. Was it Jada Smith says it? She says, "I don't believe in the one, but I believe in him." That like it doesn't matter. Like you can use that myth to kind of inspire people, because it's tapping into those universal archetypes, and it's tapping into that that artistic, abstract kind of fantastical ideal, but yet it's a real person that, like, use it as a movie. Here, let me give you a little example. There's a certain thing called the prophecy of the Rainbow Tribe, or the Rainbow People, I think it's called, the Rainbow Warriors. In Native American folklore, there's this prophecy of the Rainbow Warriors, and I thought, and when you listen to the, like, when you read it and you hear what it's saying, that there will come a people that will bring about change, and they'll teach, the nations of the earth how to live with the earth, and they'll do away with the harm and the corruption and all this stuff, and it's such a beautiful thing, and it's almost like, what if I started a movement and I adopted that, and I kind of said, like, we are, use that myth and say we are the fulfillment of we are the Rainbow Warriors, so even though you don't believe in prophecy, and it could have just been wishful, hopeful thinking, like, I'm not part of the elders that wrote it, that, like, you become the embodiment of that, and then to those who are uneducated, the uninitiated, they literally think that you are that, you're the fulfillment of the prophecy, and then you literally become the fulfillment of that prophecy. So whether it was real or not, you use it in a positive way to sort of empower the people. Like what happened the other day with the buffalo and the protests. All these buffaloes showed up, and I don't know if they were herded there or if it was just a natural phenomenon. But at the in North Dakota, with the pipeline, and they were protesting it, and then all these buffaloes show up, and it totally inspired the people, and they were like cheering, and it was because the buffalo, the Tatanka, is a sacred animal. And it's like they're coming, it's Mother Earth coming to help us to support our cause. And so whatever the real, literal sort of causal reason was for that, it doesn't matter because of the effect. What it created was, like, it empowered the people. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is that, like, what if there was a myth, or we could create a myth that could have the same effect and bring about exactly what Jamie and I, are trying to do with the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement, bring about, like, a resource-based economy, supporting and promoting environmental ethics, and teaching human beings to love and respect, all life, like a biocentric attitude. Like, I want to know, like, would it be wrong, or is it even possible to kind of use the cultural myths and become the embodiment of that expectation, that ideal? What do you think?
Well, there is Scientology, and people worship that. So
yeah. that's a whole. And he was a science fiction writer, and he basically did that as a way to make money. And yeah, and look, well, it's a good point, because I'm in Hollywood. That's a great point, WSD, because look at how powerful and influential it is. Look at how many people that's gotten sucked into that, and it's all bullshit. It's just like based on science fiction and fantasy, and yet look at how many people sort of fall victim to it. So yeah, I'm saying do the same thing, but in a positive way. Do it in a way where the only outcome is benevolence and love and altruism. You follow me?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why Batman became a hero is because he wanted to turn his dark past into something positive. I mean, he's a rich guy whose parents got murdered, and he inherited like his family's wealth, and he started up a company called Wayne Enterprises, I believe it was called. Right. Yeah. So I mean,
totally, like in the reboot, the new Batman. Batman Begins. That was exactly the message. He says anyone can kill a man, but like the League of Shadows is the same thing. The real identity of Ra's al Ghul, he changes, or he has a guy that is kind of like his impersonator, and the real guy, who's played by Liam Neeson, is sort of hidden in the shadows, so that he gives this message. He tells Bruce Wayne, he says, you can become more than a man. You can become a symbol. You can't kill a symbol. A symbol is more powerful. And that way, if you want to make change, if you really want to do something and create an impact, you have to become more than a man. You have to be the embodiment of of this symbol, whether it's like a symbol for fear, it'll something that'll strike terror in the hearts of the enemies, and that's exactly what all sort of like leaders leaders in times of war would do. They would use symbols. They would use certain this is exactly what Constantine did when he adopted the Cairo symbol and put it on the shields, and that's how it became. He thought that he won the battle because later on he says he had a vision that in this, in the name of this sign you will conquer. So that's how that came about, and the cross became that, like a symbol like that, the solar cross. It was taken from the Gauls originally, but anyway, like the idea of symbolism, like absolutely, it was in V for Vendetta too. Remember in V for Vendetta, and he goes, what's behind this mask is not just flesh. What's behind this mask is an idea, and ideas are bulletproof. So that's it exactly, just like in Batman, and it was in the new Superman too, the new the Man of Steel, when his father Jor-El is talking to him, and he's saying, you will can't remember the exact lines, but he's like, they're going to follow you, and they'll stumble and they'll fall, but eventually they'll join you in the sun. Like, you're going to become an ideal to the people of Earth. You're going to become like a standard, like a representation of strength and power and goodness, and virtue, what they could all be. So it's very powerful. Like I'm really fascinated by this idea.
Superman. He's a guy with great power, but he uses his powers for good. So
yeah, and Superman is fascinating because he there's nothing stopping him from misusing his power. He's almost all powerful. He's got the powers of a god. I never thought about this as a little kid, that all Superman's got to do is kind of lose control of his emotions, or kind of get like butthurt and get mad or angry, and he'll just like burn up a whole city, or he could just do so much chaos and destruction.
Dude, he could destroy a planet with a stare contest. So what's that?
This is why Batman was always mistrusting of him, because he's just a man, and he's got so much power, but he's got the soul of a man. So that's what's fascinating, is that like he doesn't have anything stopping him from being evil except his upbringing, just his kind of his sort of very humble, his parents, they're farmers.
He also represents willpower and a guy who has values and ethics. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, it's his values and ethics that make him good, because he could literally he could rule the planet. He could do anything he wants with his power. So with great power comes great responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which came from Spider-Man, but
Yeah, Spider-Man, same thing. If it wasn't for he could use his his abnormal
he's not nearly as powerful as Superman, but
No, he could. What the idea is that he could use it for. I've read many Spider-Man comics, and he goes, I could do this and I could do that, but that's not how I was raised. It's just his own ethics, his own morals and values that keep him. He's a superhuman. He's a metahuman, as they call it in X-Men mythology. He's a metahuman, but at the same time, he's still got the heart and the compassion and the mind and the will and emotions of a regular human. So it's interesting, like what. If we want to become the superheroes of our generation, right? Like use our talents and skills and abilities, and if we incorporate symbolism, if we use maybe existing mythos, the most important thing is that we keep sight of our ideals. That we never do it for personal gain. We do it for the benefit of all. We never do it just for popularity or for for selfish reasons, or we if we're going to create a movement, it's got to be something that's bigger than us, that has the purest intentions. And I know Christians would say the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but I don't know, man. I believe in the power of the human psyche and like how we can influence and affect people. We need to use art and different mediums and different symbols and tools, and even existing mythologies, or create a new mythology. I think it would be incredibly powerful. Remember how Slender Man was like just a thing that they made up, on the internet, and then all of a sudden people are like seeing Slender Man and they're killing people because of it, and it was insane. Like, it was on the creepypasta. It was a story, and it got carried, got taken out of hand and got carried away with it, and people became obsessed with it. And then we realized that somebody actually just invented the story, but that's a form of a modern day, urban legend that got, it just spread like wildfire and went viral. And then people are seeing Slender Man, and there was a movie made about it, but I mean, it's Jessica Biel, but it went a different direction. But that mythos, that's the power of mythology. Urban legends can become so powerful.
Like I was saying, they become role models for kids because comic books heroes, they become they teach kids not to steal, not to hurt other humans and stuff like that. So,
and either, like, it can go either way. You can have negative role models, or you could have positive ones. So it's all about, like, what they represent and the actions of those characters and what they do. One of these days, I like to get back into the Lord of the Rings thing and explain, because a little more, like I was saying before, like the wizards, what they represent, stuff, and like this sort of ethereal wisdom that's coming from another place to kind of guide mankind. They all represent different aspects of us. Like, those could be considered maybe the scientists, or the deep philosophers, or those who understand human nature and psychology. That's what they represent. But anyway, I gotta get going, man. Like, I gotta spend some time with my girl, and it's getting late. But it was great chatting with you guys. Did you want to keep talking, or do you want me to wrap it up, like Chandler said?
Yeah, wrap it up.
Yeah, is that cool, Jamie? Do you have more you want to say, or you want to just close out?
Yeah, just close it up. I have nothing else to say, so
Sure. Well, it was great talking with you guys, and I guess we'll try to come up with a title for this maybe tomorrow with Chandler. This is Poffo, WSD, and Jamie signing out. We covered all kinds of great stuff, so I hope you enjoy this, Chandler. This was supposed to be like the Halloween edition. We talked about mythology. We talked about folklore and legends and Halloween and origins of holidays, paganism, paranormal, supernatural. So this is kind of like a nice medley, maybe a little bit different than we normally do. But you guys have a good weekend. Enjoy your holiday, however you celebrate, and watch out for the spooks and the ghosts and goblins and the scary stuff. But just keep your wits about you, because we know all that stuff's just human creations. I think human beings are the most powerful thing on this planet right now. So we gotta really embrace that power. The storytelling and myth can be something useful, or it can be damaging, as it is with like certain Abrahamic religions.
Well, the most powerful thing is stupidity. I mean, look at climate change. Yeah. Humans caused that. Man-made climate change.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, we gotta.
Yes, they did.
And some people think it's a myth, and a lot of people think it's a myth. They don't even believe in it. But hey, all right, let me sign out. So you guys have a good weekend. Be safe, whatever you do. And to the listeners, I hope you appreciate this episode. Thanks for listening. Have a good one. Take care.